Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Welcome to another psychiatric and mental health nursing lecture. At ang pag-uusapan natin for today's discussion will be all about neurocognitive disorders. Our learning objectives at the end of this discussion, you'll be able to describe the characteristics and the risk factors of different cognitive disorders. We'll be able to differentiate delirium and dementia. We'll be able to plan care for clients with cognitive disorders, determine different techniques for meeting the needs of people diagnosed with dementia or delirium, provide educational support for the clients, their families, caregivers, and the community members to increase their awareness and understanding of cognitive disorders. Lastly, evaluate feelings, beliefs, and attitudes regarding clients with cognitive disorders. Let's begin with definition of what cognition or cognitive is. Ang salitang cognition, it refers to the brain's ability to process, retain, and use information. Kasama dito ang mga iba't ibang brain activities kung tawagin natin reasoning, judgment, perception, attention, comprehension or understanding, and last, yung memory. Mahalaga itong mga ito kapag ang isang individual ay kailangang gumawa ng isang desisyon, kailangang mag-provide ng solution on a certain problem, kailangang matuto, or kailangan naman niyang i-interpret ang mga nangyayari sa kanyang environment or sa kanyang paligid. So, ganyan ka-importante yung tinatawag nating cognition sa isang individual or sa human beings. Now, cognitive disorder is defined as a disruption or impairment with all those higher level brain functions na napag-usapan natin. Ito mas madalas ang naipapakita dito yung mga pagkalimot ng mga bagay-bagay kagaya na lang ng pangalan ng isa sa mga miyembro ng kapamilya niya or pamilya. Pwedeng hindi makagawa or makakilos sa mga activities of daily living or even yung mga house chores. Or minsan naman napapabayaan or nagkakaroon ng tinatawag na neglect sa kanilang personal hygiene. Ibig sabihin, kapag nakakaranas na ng mga ganito ang isang individual or ang isang tao, maaaring siya ay nakakaranas na tinatawag nating cognitive disorder. Based on DSM-5, meron tayong iba't ibang klase ng category for the neurocognitive disorders. Meron tayong tinatawag na delirium, dementia, major and mild neurocognitive disorders. Let's discuss them one by one. Let's start with delirium. Now, delirium is defined as a syndrome that involves a disturbance of consciousness accompanied by a change in cognition. Ibig sabihin nito, may biglaan at panandaliang pagbabago sa kamalayan at cognition ng isang individual. Mas madalas ito nagbabago-bago or kung tawagin natin, fluctuating. Pero ito mas madalas, ang development niya is over a short period of time. So, mabilisan lamang. Maaari nating makita ng mga senyales o sintomas sa isang individual suffering with a delirium, mga signs and symptoms kagaya ng hirap mag-focus, madaling ma-distract, disoriented, or yung kumbaga nakakaranas ng kalituhan sa oras, kalituhan sa petsa, minsan pati sa kanyang lugar o kapaligiran. Pwede ding magkaroon ng mga tinatawag na sensory disturbances in the form of illusions, hallucinations, sometimes misinterpretations. Apektado din ang sleep and wake cycle, ibig sabihin ang pagtulog at ang paggising ng isang individual. Maaaring magkaroon din ng mga changes in the psychomotor activities And pwede ding magkaroon ng tinatawag na mga emotional problems or mood swings, kagaya ng mga emosyon ipinapakita, may takot, merong galit, minsan naman nakakaranas ng euphoria or yung napapasobra sa kaligayahan ang isang individual. Now, for the risk factors, people suffering from delirium or suffering with delirium, mas madalas ang apektado dito are the older adults. So si lolo at si lola, mas madalas sila yung involved in this type of a mental condition. Now, increased severity of physical illness ang isa sa nakikita natin. Ibig sabihin, ito ay maaaring associated ng mga iba't ibang klase ng malulubhang sakit. Meron ding kinalaman with regards to the hearing impairment or hearing loss. It could also be a result of a severe dehydration, maaaring epekto ng mga tinitake na mga gamot, whether it is prescribed medicines or whatever chemicals or substances that an individual is taking. It could also be a result, no, among those different food and fluid intakes. And dito ang delirium ay maaari ding makita sa mga bata or in our pediatric patients, specifically dun sa mga nakakaranas ng mga febrile illness or infection. It could also be a result of administering medications such as anticholinergics, or it could also be out of different severe or chronic conditions. When it comes to the etiology of delirium, it could be a result of a out of a physiological or metabolic condition. It could be a result of an infection, or it could be drug related. Now, these are the most common causes of delirium. Now, based on those individuals diagnosed with delirium, mas madalas ito yung mga pinanggagalingang kadahilanan kung bakit sila nakakaranas ng biglaan o panandaliang pagbabago with their consciousness and with their condition. For the physiological or metabolic aspects, it could be a result of a hypoxemia, electrolyte disturbance, renal or hepatic failure, hypo or hyperglycemia, dehydration, sleep deprivation, thyroid or a glucocorticoid disturbances, deficiencies among vitamin B12 or thiamine, or it could be a deficiency as well of an ascorbic acid or niacin. It could also a result of a cardiovascular shock, a brain tumor, head injury, exposure to gasoline or any other chemicals, paint solvents, and even insecticides, yung mga strong chemicals natin. For infection as a cause of delirium, it could be a result out of a systemic infection such as sepsis, urinary tract infection, pneumonia. For cerebral infection, it could be a result of meningitis, encephalitis, also HIV and syphilis. For the drug-related causes, it could be a result of an intoxication, such as your anticholinergics, usage of lithium, alcohol, sedatives, and hypnotics. For withdrawal-related cause, it could be withdrawal from alcohol, sedatives, hypnotics. It could also be associated with with a reaction from an anesthesia, prescribed medications, and illicit drugs. Now, let's talk about the treatment and prognosis of delirium. Now, when it comes to treatment, our priority is to identify and treat the cause or contributory factor when it comes to the medical condition of our patients. For the intervention, of course, drug administration or the psychopharmacology will be one of our initiatives. And The group of drugs that we will consider to manage delirium will always be your antipsychotics. For the antipsychotics, to correct hallucinations, illusions, or if there are other sensory disturbances, we can administer based on the prescription or the recommendation of the doctor. Haloperidol, brand name Haldol, can be one of the drugs. So haloperidol is suggested to be given 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram that can be administered either oral, intramuscular, or intravenous. Now, this will help decrease agitation and psychotic symptoms of our patient, and it will also help them facilitate sleep. Other drugs to be considered will be our anti-anxiety drug. That will be our benzodiazepines. Under this category, one of the most commonly prescribed is your lorazepam, brand name Ativan. Now, this could have a short-acting or intermediate-acting use, and for the usage or the administration of benzodiazepines or diazepine, nurses, you're advised to be careful in administering this drug to older clients or to our geriatric patients because this medication can cause CNS depression. And in that case, older adults could either weaken their body system or at the same time, it can worsen yung delirium case ng pasyente natin. So, kailangan nating pag-ingatan if this will be prescribed to our geriatric patients. But this will be the treatment of a sedative hypnotic withdrawal and alcohol withdrawal. Again, benzodiazepines will be our drug of choice. But be careful because this medication, part of the pharmacokinetics, it passes in our liver and kidney function. So it is part of the metabolic and excretion process. Kaya be careful with clients diagnosed with either liver or kidney function impairment. Sedation or sedatives can also be given because this will prevent inadvertent self-injury. But again, as much as possible, be careful, and if it's avoidable, mas mainam pa din to what you call this, be careful in administering sedatives and benzodiazepines. For other medical intervention, we can consider the nutrition and the dietary intake of our client. That includes the food and the fluid intake. Now, IV fluids and parenteral nutrition can be considered if the case of your client is deteriorating. But as much as possible, oral administration of food and fluids is still highly recommended. Physical restraints will only be in place if there is an agitation and if the client is showing severe or worst case scenario that we really have to physically control our clients. But as much as possible, medications will help regulate the mood or the emotion of our client. Other nursing care of clients with delirium, our focus is to meet the physiological and the psychological needs. But on top of everything, we have to maintain the safety of our patients. So nurses, it's a must that we assess the behavior, the mood, and the level of consciousness of our clients. So take note of that. I will repeat, behavior, mood, and level of consciousness. Now, in assessing patients with delirium, it's important that we obtain information from our client. So this will be part of their medical history. Importante that we will be able to document medical illness or problems, surgeries happened in the past, or any current medications taken by our client. Is it prescribed? Is it for support like vitamins and minerals? Is our patient a smoker or consume alcohol? So that will be part of the history. Next will be the general appearance and motor behavior. It's important that we assess or we look at our client from head to toe. We check the psychomotor behavior. Are there any restlessness? Is your client hyperactive? Or in contrast, is there a slowed motor behavior such as sluggish speech or lethargic appearance of our client? When it comes to speech, we need to again assess our client. Is it less coherent, more difficult to understand? Is it rambling or difficult to follow? Are they pressured, rapid, forced, or louder tone of voice as compared to a normal one? And may call out or scream at night. So those will be part of the psychomotor behavior as well. For the mood and emotion or affect, it could be it could be the areas where unpredictable and rapid mood shifts are noticed. Is there an anxiety or fear? Is there an irritability or anger? Nagpapakita ba ng sobra-sobrang kasiyahan ang pasyente natin or there is an apathy? For the thought process and content, there could be thoughts are unrelated to the situation. There could be an illogical speech or it's very difficult to understand the words or the terms that our client is saying. Is there a disorganized or no sense or nonsense at all, no? Na mga sinasabi ng client natin. Fragmented or ibig sabihin nito incomplete or meron siyang mga nararanasang delusions. For the sensorium and intellectual process, dito ang nakikita naman natin or yung mga ina-assess naman natin will be altered level of consciousness, disoriented to time and place, decreased awareness of the environment, focus on irrelevant stimuli, distracted in the sense of yung ingay sa paligid, yung mga tao sa paligid, sensory misperceptions, impaired recent and immediate memory, mga misinterpretations, hallucinations, illusions, pagdating sa judgment and insight, yung mga impairment nakikita natin na mga actions and decisions potentially harmful to the situation, may confusion, pwedeng ganyan, yung mga makita natin. In addition, will be areas pagdating sa roles and relationships, self-concept, physiological, and self-care consideration. So these are the areas that we also assess among our clients. For the nursing diagnosis, one of the primary problems natin dito will be the risk for injury. Again, our priority will be our client's safety. There is also what we call acute confusion. Other problems to consider will be hallucinations and other sensory disturbance, disorganization or disrupted thought process, inadequate sleep and rest, dehydration, inadequate food and fluid intake. For the nursing interventions, nurses, these are important. And I want you to highlight the following nursing interventions because it appears in your examination. What will be your management for an individual or a client suffering with delirium? The first one is promoting the client's safety. I just told you that's our priority. So for this one, make sure that medications should be used judiciously. Like for sedatives, no, sedatives can worsen the confusion. Kaya as much as possible, we follow the doctor's order and we make sure that all the dosage of the prescribed drugs are correct. Teach clients to request assistance for activities if necessary. But at the end of the day, their independence pa din ang isa sa mga goal natin. May require close supervision, physical restraints. Remember, this will be our last resort, our last initiative or last action natin iyan. Physical restraints. Include family and caregivers in the plan of care to provide them reassurance. For managing clients' confusion, calm approach and speaking clearly and in a low voice will be necessary. So I will repeat that calm approach. As much as possible, we do not shout at our clients, we do not increase our voice. As much as possible, it's low, and we use terminologies that the client will immediately understand. Realistic reassurance is important. Explain that clients can understand, explain that the client's level of cognition or awareness, no, will be able to easily understand yung mga konsepto na gusto nating i-discuss sa kanila. Promoting sleep and proper nutrition will be part of our intervention. Gaya nga ng nabanggit ko, sleep is important, elimination, food and fluid intake as well. As much as possible, you sit with the client during meal times, frequently offer fluids, especially on a summer season na masyadong mainit, to prevent dehydration and other medical conditions, assist clients to bathroom to promote elimination, but as much as possible, if we can assess the client that the client is still independent to do things, that is still suggested. Discourage or limit daytime napping para mas complete yung tulog niya sa gabi, exercise, and activities such as what we call diversional activities to help divert yung thought process ng clients natin and help them focus on what they are doing. Now, another concern under the neurocognitive disorders is what we call dementia. Dementia is defined as a disease process marked by progressive cognitive impairment with no change in the level of consciousness. Nga lang, with dementia, there are what we call multiple cognitive deficit. It could be a memory impairment that will be the initial part of the process. Then, the latter part will be the cognitive disturbances. Under the cognitive disturbances, dito na nagpapakita yung tinatawag nating iba't ibang 5As ang client natin. Of course, there will be amnesia, anomia, apraxia, agnosia, and aphasia. Aphasia is a deterioration of language function. Apraxia is impairment of motor ability. Agnosia, remembering or recognition ang hindi magawa ng client natin. Disturbance in executive functioning, kagaya ng abstract thinking, and complex behavior. Ayon sa DSM-5, may dalawang pangunahing categories under neurocognitive disorders, yung tinatawag nating mild and major neurocognitive disorders. Now, the mild cognitive disorders, there is what we call a mild cognitive decline. Ang ibig sabihin nito, may bahagyang pagbaba o paghina sa memorya o pag-iisip ng isang individual. Yung tinatawag na modest impairment or yung sinasabi nga ng DSM-5, modest impairment of performance that doesn't prevent independent living but that may require some accommodation or assistance. Ang ibig sabihin nito, ang isang individual suffering with a mild neurocognitive disorder may konting problema sa performance niya ng activities of daily living. Pero kaya pa rin niyang mamuhay somehow independent. Ibig sabihin, kailangan lamang niya ng konting assistance or konting tulong or konting adjustments para magampanan pa din niya yung mga kailangan niyang gawin as an individual. Let's say, for example, self-care, preparing their food, ambulation or yung walking, mga kailangan lang ng reminder or mga simpleng assistance. So, yan yung kinakategorize ng DSM-5 for this aspect, mild neurocognitive disorders. Pagdating naman dun sa ikalawa, major neurocognitive disorders, ang sinasabi ng DSM-5 dito, meron daw tinatawag or nakitaan ng significant cognitive decline. Ano ang ibig sabihin nito? Kung kanina bahagya lamang o kaunti lamang ang pagbaba sa memory, dito sa major neurocognitive, may malaki or may significant na paghina or pagbaba sa memory, reasoning, at iba pang cognitive function ng isang individual. Kaya kung ikukumpara ang dalawa, mas malala at mas kinakailangan ng buong suporta or tulong ang mga pasyente natin under the category of major neurocognitive disorder. Dito may tinatawag na substantial impairment. Ang ibig sabihin nun, hindi talaga kaya ng individual na mabuhay mag-isa. The person cannot perform activities of daily living. The person cannot look after himself or herself, kagaya ng pagpapaligo, pagbihis, paghanda ng pagkain, pakikipag-usap sa ibang tao o pakikisalamuha, may problema sa pagtulog at sa paggising. So, ibig sabihin, kailangan niya ng tulong halos sa lahat ng gawain para maging meaningful at para mag-survive ang client natin or ang isang individual. So that's the difference between the two DSM-5 categories under neurocognitive disorder. Now, who are at risk in developing dementia? For the risk factors, obviously, mas madalas na nadadiagnose ang mga older adults natin, mostly elderly. There is also an increased severity of physical illness. Meron ding risk factors for those people experiencing hearing impairment or illness, those with decreased food and fluid intake, those taking specific medications that can affect the cognitive functions, and it can also affect children, no, especially those experiencing febrile illness or those taking medications as well. Now, ang dementia may tatlong iba't ibang stages when it comes to stages, or ito yung sinasabi nating onset and clinical course. For the first stage, we have mild dementia. It is also known as the early stage. Dito, ang nararanasan ng individual may madalas na pagkalimot sa mga bagay-bagay, may mga sitwasyon na maaari niyang ma-misplaced or mawala yung mga gamit niya, mga gamit, whatever things it is, no? Pero mas madalas, hindi niya maalala kung saan niya nailagay, kaya nawawala. And nagkakaroon na rin ng difficulty in expressing their thoughts or nahihirapan na silang magsalita. So most likely, in the mild dementia or in the early stage, there is what we call forgetfulness. And please highlight that one because that is the hallmark beginning of dementia. The next one is what we call moderate dementia. This is the middle stage. For the moderate dementia, ang isa sa mga clinical indication dito is the confusion. Ang confusion kasi nagiging apparent along with progressive memory loss and no longer able to do complex tasks yung client natin. And dito mas lumalala yung memory loss, kaya problem talaga natin yung mga complex tasks na ibinibigay natin sa kanila. But then again, yung mga tao dito still oriented with the person they are talking with or kung sino yung kasama nila sa buhay, with their environment or yung kanilang lugar or yung kanilang place. Pwede pa din silang makarecognize ng mga familiar situations or familiar people. For the last and the third stage of dementia, which is the severe or the late stage, dito naman, there is a significant change observed. Hindi na niya talaga nare-recognize ang kanyang pamilya o yung mga tao sa kanyang paligid. Maaaring nagkakaroon na ng mga delusional episodes, nangangailangan na ng tulong, kabuuang tulong pagdating sa kanyang survival or pagdating sa kanyang activities of daily living. Now, this is an infographic about the different 3 stages of dementia that I want you nursing students to always remember or recall. Basta laging tatandaan, for pagdating sa 3 stages, we have the early stage, middle stage, and later stage. Early stage, remember that forgetfulness. Middle stage, there is always a confusion. For the later stage, there is a complete need of support for clients. Severe na kasi ito. For the etiology, it could be a result out of a physiological and metabolic activity. So, pwedeng ito ay sanhi ng tinatawag nating fluid and electrolyte imbalance. There could also be an insufficiency of the cardiopulmonary system, problems affecting the endocrine glands or the endocrine system, hepatic and renal failure. Dito, maaari ding mai-associate natin sa tinatawag na vascular dementia, which is defined as a multiple vascular lesions of the cerebral cortex and subcortical structures na siyang nagiging dahilan ng pagbagsak or paghina o pagbaba ng blood supply sa utak ng client natin. There is also what we call problems, no? Resulting out of an infection, kagaya ng HIV, ng AIDS. It could also be related to what we call Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. It's a common prion disease wherein ang manifestations nito will be alteration sa vision, loss of coordination, may tinatawag na abnormal movements, and dementia that progresses rapidly. Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease. Ito, it could be, results, no, to encephalopathy, yung nangyayari dito. It could also be an effect out of a drug use, not only drugs but other chemicals such as alcohol, mga inhalants, sedatives, your anti-anxiety medications, hypnotics, even some anticonvulsants or anti-seizure drugs, and even toxins. Yung iba naman, dementia happened because out of a head trauma. There is a bleeding into the brain, bleeding into the spaces around the brain, or it could be a presence of a blood clot, or even concussions. For genetic etiology, dementia can be related to what we call Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease. Now, ang Huntington's disease ay isa sa mga, kung tawagin natin, dominant gene na sakit, ibig sabihin ng dominant gene, isa sa mga sakit na pwedeng mamana or namamana ng isang individual. Ibig sabihin, maaaring ang isa sa mga magulang ay may genes or part of their DNA na nagdadala ng sakit na ito at malaki ang chance na maipasa nila ito sa kanilang mga anak. Ang problem with Huntington's disease, nagdudulot ito ng tinatawag nating cerebral atrophy. So take note of that, paki-highlight, paki-underline, the term cerebral atrophy. When you see cerebral atrophy, sa Tagalog, lumiliit yung brain or yung portion of the brain ng client natin or ng individuals. There is also what we call demyelination. Please highlight that term as well. Ang ibig sabihin naman nito, nasisira yung tinatawag nating myelin sheaths, which are part of the protective layer sa neurons ng client natin, the myelin sheaths. And yung iba naman, ang nangyayari, in addition to those two physiological changes, meron ding paglaki ng brain ventricles natin. So there is an enlargement of the brain ventricles. Now, what will be the symptoms that we are observing among our clients? The first one, there is what we call choreiform movement. So take note of this. If we're talking about Huntington's disease, remember that choreiform movement. Choreiform movements, ito yung, ang ibig sabihin nito, hindi makontrol yung galaw ng katawan na bigla-biglang nagkakaroon ng twitching. So, uncontrolled movement, yan. There is also what we call facial contortions. Ang ibig sabihin ng facial contortions na yan, yung pagbaluktot ng part or bahagi ng face or ng mukha ng client natin. There are also twisting, turning tongue movements, mga abnormal na abnormal na paggalaw ng iba't ibang bahagi ng katawan, mas madalas sa dila ang apektado, memory loss at pagbaba ng intellectual function. Kaya dito na nagpapakita ng unti-unting nag-lead na yung case natin to dementia. Nagsisimula ang Huntington's disease mas madalas late 30s to early 40s. And tumatagal ito about 10 to 20 years hanggang sa death will arise. So, I mean, hanggang sa ikamatay na ng client natin. Ito ay progressive. When you say progressive, lumalala yung case ng client habang siya ay tumatanda or habang tumatagal yung panahon. So, mas lumalala siya. That's what progressive means. So, what will be our nursing implication for Huntington's disease? So, these are illustrations when it comes to the genetic component, I mean the genetic explanation of Huntington's disease as a genetic neurocognitive disorder. Yung tinatawag na dominant genes, yan, sa chromosomes, pinapakita sa picture na to. Then, what will be our nursing implications, no, for the Huntington's disease? Of course, for the assessment part, importante na bantayan yung involuntary movements, yung pag-decline ng cognition and pagbabago sa emosyon ng client natin. Safety measures will be our priority, help with the activities of daily living, emotional support for the family members dealing with their loved ones suffering from Huntington's disease. Kaya health teaching is very important for other people to understand people suffering from Huntington's disease. Now, on the screen, what is next will be the Alzheimer's disease. Ang Alzheimer's disease ay isa din sa mga tinatawag na genetic neurocognitive disorder. Alzheimer's is also progressive. Ibig sabihin nito, dahan-dahan ang simula, pero tuloy-tuloy ang paghina or pagbaba ng brain function ng client natin. Well, one of the difference of the Alzheimer's disease and Huntington's disease, sa Alzheimer's may atrophy sa cerebral neurons or yung tinatawag nating senile plaque deposits. Pero pareho ng Huntington's may paglaki sa ventricles ng utak. Ang isa sa pinakakaraniwang sanhi ng dementia sa matatanda will be Alzheimer's disease. Ito yung isa sa very common among our geriatric clients. Now, signs and symptoms will be memory loss, yung unti-unting nawawala yung memories ng client natin because of that atrophy ng cerebral neurons. May loss of speech at motor function, nahihirapang magsalita at nahihirapang kumilos or magkaroon ng koordinasyon ng pagkilos ang client natin. Profound personality and behavioral changes, paranoia, delusions, and hallucinations. Now, ang Alzheimer's disease, ito naman, the onset, most likely nangyayari 65 years old and above. So, ibig sabihin, talagang nandun na sa geriatric age yung client natin and then tsaka siya nakakaranas nitong progressive brain disorder na ito. Karaniwan tumatagal ito about 8 to 10 years and then until death happen to our clients. And gaya din ng Huntington's, it's progressive. Hindi na natin maibabalik or hindi na natin maiko-correct yung problems experienced by our client. Tuloy-tuloy ito hanggang sa lumala yung condition and until such until such chronic condition makita natin and then well death will happen eventually. So this is an example of a differentiation ng Alzheimer's disease. Sabi ko nga kanina, there is an atrophy ng cerebral neurons natin. The plaques are affected here. So yung yellow illustrations na yan are the abnormalities observed sa utak ng isang pasyente na may Alzheimer's disease. That's why nursing implications in handling this disorder is also very important. Bantayan ang pag-decline ng memory ng mga client natin. That will be part of our assessment. Yung mga pagbabago pagdating sa pagkilos o pananalita ng client natin, we have to observe and report or inform other members of the healthcare team. Also assess any mood or behavioral or emotional changes. Importante na matulungan natin na makapag-recall or na makarecall yung clients natin, though we are fully aware that the case is irreversible and it is progressive, but still, initiatives like providing memory aids, kagaya ng kalendaryo, images or pictures, mga reminders, sometimes journal or notebook, can help these clients manage their forgetfulness. Panatilihin natin yung routine na ginagawa nila on a day-to-day basis from morning till night para hindi sila malito or para hindi sila magkaroon ng confusion sa mga gagawin nila sa pang-araw-araw. Magbigay ng one-step instructions. As much as possible, make it easy, avoid complexity of instructions, use simple terms that elderly people will be able to understand. Safety measures ang napaka-importante sa lahat kasi people suffering with Alzheimer's disease, sometimes they wander. Wander, ibig sabihin ikot ng ikot, they just move around, and sometimes nakakalimutan ang safety, or I mean, at risk sila for injuries, falls, kaya safety measures, importanteng they are in place. Health teaching, is very important. Kailangang maipaliwanag natin, nurses, of course, along with the doctors and other members of the healthcare team, na ang Alzheimer's disease ay progressive at unfortunately, wala nang lunas. Kaya, kinakailangan ng long-term care, emotional support to all the people involved sa client or sa individual na apektado ng sakit na ito. Next, we have what we call Pick's disease. Ang Pick's disease naman is a problem happening in the frontotemporal lobar degeneration of the brain. It's a degenerative brain disease. It affects the frontal and temporal lobes, and early signs could be personality changes, loss of social skills and inhibitions, emotional blunting, language abnormalities, and onset of Pick's disease sometimes happen between 50 to 60 years old. And death occurs usually 2 to 5 years after the diagnosis. Pick's disease. Next, Parkinson's disease. Now, Parkinson's, isa na to sa mga paulit-ulit nating nadi-discuss na sakit. But for the Parkinson's disease, it's a slowly progressive neurologic condition. There are what we call tremors, rigidity, bradykinesia, and postural instability observed among clients diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Dito ang nangyayari, there is what we call a loss of neurons within the basal ganglia, and 25% approximately caused with mild neurocognitive disorder, 75% major neurocognitive disorders. Now, other related disorders to dementia, it could be a substance-induced mild or major neurocognitive disorder. So, this is beyond intoxication or withdrawal. Ang characterization nito is a neurocognitive impairment. Kapag napapasobra ang alcohol intake, or other substances, it can also lead to neurocognitive impairment. Meron din tayong tinatawag na Korsakoff syndrome. Korsakoff syndrome, it's an amnestic disorder, and this happened because of a long-term use of alcohol, resulting now to dementia. For the management or treatment for vascular dementia, it's important that we have to improve the cerebral blood flow. For the progressive dementia naman, the involvement of progressive deterioration of physical and mental abilities until death will be our priority, I mean, part of our intervention. For the degenerative, there's no direct therapies for this one, pero replenishment therapy of the affected neurotransmitters can also help. That will be your acetylcholine precursors, cholinesterase agonists, and cholinesterase inhibitors. Now, these are the list of drugs that we can consider to administer for clients with dementia, along with the important nursing considerations. So, for dementia, of course, the first or priority drug natin will always be donepezil or Aricept. Sabi nga, isa to sa mga gamot that we give for clients with Alzheimer's disease. Dosage will be from 5 to 10 milligram, that's per orum per day. And then we also have rivastigmin, that's 3 to 12 milligram per orum per day, but this one, it must be divided into 2 doses. Kaya kung 3 milligrams yan, it must be 1.5, 1.5 to be administered for the entire day. Galantamine or Reminil is one. Excuse me. It's 16 to 32 milligrams per orum per day. Again, divided into 2 doses as well. Other forms of drugs that we can consider will be memantine and Namzaric. For the treatment and prognosis, nurses can administer prescribed medications for people experiencing dementia. And those categories or those medications will be antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-mania, and anti-anxiety drugs. For the antidepressants, SSRI are the medications considered because of fewer side effects. For the antipsychotics, the following medications can be given. Those are, it could be haloperidol, olanzapine, risperidone, and quetiapine. Of course, for the anti-mania, we only have lithium carbonate, but we can also use the effects, or we can also benefit from the effect of carbamazepine, valproic acid, and for the anti-anxiety, we always have your benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines. Now, this table will help you understand the different comparisons of delirium and dementia. These are all the areas that we discussed early from the different indicators and ano yung magdi-differentiate sa bawat isa. So these are all self-explanatories and this has lahat naman na to natalakay na natin kanina on the early part of the discussion. Now, for the nursing care of clients with dementia, same with the delirium, we'll use the nursing process for us to know what to do and how to handle those individuals or clients suffering with this neurocognitive problem. So we have to assess areas such as inability to recall factual information or events, inability to learn new materials or recall previously learned materials, inability to determine whether a behavior was performed, and is there an agitation or anxiety regarding memory loss. For the nursing diagnosis, of course, we always have memory impairment. And for the different nursing interventions, we need to provide opportunities for reminisce or recall of past events on a one-on-one or one-to-one basis or on a small group. So, pwede natin itong i-consider. Gaya nga ng encourage sa mga client natin to use written cues, kagaya ng pagsusulat sa notebook or sa mga tickler, or paggamit ng kalendaryo, pwede din yan. Minimize environmental changes as much as possible. Kung ano yung routine nila, we keep that, and kung ano yung established among our clients, yun yung priority natin. We need to ensure that usual routine and alter only kung kinakailangan. Provide single-step instructions, mga madaling maintindihan na mga instructions. Provide verbal connections. Integrate reminders of previous events. Assist with tasks as needed, but do not rush to do things for the client. And use a matter-of-fact approach when assuming tasks that the client can no longer perform. Do not allow the client to work unsuccessfully at a task for an extended time. So those are important aspects that we need to know, we need to learn all about the neurocognitive disorders. At dito po nagtatapos ang mga dapat nating malaman pagdating sa mga iba't ibang kategorya ng mga neurocognitive disorders And kung merong mga katanungan, concerns, or mga hindi naintindihan, you may send it to my email address acdemesa@fatima.edu.ph. Maraming salamat sa inyong pakikinig.